Okay, so today we're solving one-step inequalities. One step meaning I need to do one thing to get my variable alone on one side of my inequality. So inequalities, that's everything that's not an equal sign. So we're going to go through some examples, but first we're going to look at some tips for solving and graphing inequalities. So the goal is to get the variable alone on one side of the sign. So the variable has to be by itself on one side of my inequality sign. So I'm going to say if it is a symbol that looks like this or like this, I'm going to put an open circle on my graph. If it's just less than or greater than, I'm going to put an open circle on my graph. Well, if it's less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, if it has that line underneath, I'm going to put a closed circle on my graph. So let's see what I mean. Example 1 is addition and subtraction. It says 7 plus x is greater than 4. So I said highlight your inequality. Go ahead, show where the sign is. So I highlighted it for you, but you can highlight it again on your paper with a big highlighter. So I'm trying to get the x alone. So if x needs to be alone on the left side of my inequality, what do I move over? What can I move over? I have this positive 7 over here. How can I move a positive 7 to the other side of my inequality? Well, I could subtract 7 from both sides. So positive 7 minus 7 gives me 0. I'm left with a positive x is greater than negative 3. Well, is my x alone? Yep. X is greater than negative 3. So if I have a number line and it has 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and it says that x is greater than negative 3, that means any value I put into x in my equation that's bigger than 3 will be true. I can put any value greater than 3 or negative 3 in for x, and it's true. So my answer is going to be all the stuff above negative 3. So I have a circle at negative 3. Is it going to be open or closed? Well, it's going to be open because of this guy right here. It's an open circle. And it says that x is greater than negative 3. Say it out loud. X is greater than negative 3. So I'm going to shade everything bigger than negative 3. You can either shade it like this. You can do an open circle with an arrow. Or if you have a fancy highlighter tool, aha, like this. You can shade it that way. As long as I know there's an open circle and you're shading above negative 3, you are good to go. So let's look at a couple more. X minus 10 is less than negative 8. So I'm trying to get x alone on the left side of my sign. Ooh. So if I add 10 to both sides, I'm left with x. What's negative 10 plus 10? Those cross off, right? They become 0. So I get x is less than negative 8 plus 10 gives me positive 2. So if this is my answer, x is less than 2, I can come to my number line and say, well, I have 2, 3, 4, 1, and 0. Since it's just less than, I have an open circle at 2. And I want everything below or less than 2. So say this out loud. X is less than 2. So I want any number for x that's smaller than 2. Well, let's take a look at this one. This one looks a little bit different than others. It says 11 is less than or equal to x minus 3. So this time I'm trying to get x alone, but it's going to be alone on the right side, not the left side. So if I add 3 to both sides, I move that minus 3 over. 11 plus 3 gives me 14. So I get 14 is less than or equal to x. We'll read this out loud. 14 is less than or equal to x. Or x is greater than or equal to 14. See how I switched that? The sign is eating the x. The sign is eating the x. It's okay if you move them, but just make sure the sign flips. X is greater than or equal to 14, or 14 is less than or equal to x. Well, if I come to my number line, I have 14, 15, we'll do 13 down here, 12, 16. I have a closed circle at 14 because it's less than or equal to. And it's saying 14 is less than or equal to x, or x is greater than or equal to 14. So which side am I going to shade? I'm going to shade up here. I want the numbers bigger than 14. If 14 is less than or equal to x, that means x is everything bigger than 14. Okay, so couple with multiplication and division. 5x is less than or equal to negative 15. So how can I get x alone on the left side of my equal sign? It has this 5 attached to it. That 5 is attached by multiplication, so if I divide both sides by 5, I get x is less than or equal to negative 3. So when I come to graph x is less than or equal to negative 3, I'm going to do a closed circle at negative 3. It says x is less than or equal to negative 3. I'm going to shade everything less than negative 3. You can shade with a squiggle or you can shade with an arrow. Let's take a look at this one, number 5. Negative x over 5 is less than 11. Well, to get my x alone, I need to multiply both sides by -5. And you say, Miss R, why negative? See this negative right here? To get that negative away from x, I have to multiply both sides by -5, because then that negative cancels out with that negative. So I'm left with x all alone. 11 times -5 is -55. Well, if I multiply or divide by a negative, I flip my sign. So it was less than, it's going to become greater than. So x is greater than -55. So if I do my little graph, -55, -54, -56, an open circle, because x is greater than. Well, if I want x is bigger than -55, are they bigger on the left or on the right? They're bigger over here on the right. This is where I'm going to shade. I want everything over there. So turn your paper over and try these on your own. Remember, when we multiply or divide by a negative, we flip our sign. That's huge. Make sure you keep flipping that sign.